Fans of the Wrestling Chatter YouTube channel, welcome once again to Xtreme Memories, hosted by yours truly, Kris Kloss. And we've been bringing you episodes on the 15th and 30th of every month. And this is a milestone episode right here because Josh Lazie, of course, this is not complete without Mr. Lazie, but this is a milestone for the Wrestling Chatter and Xtreme Memories because you are the episode 1 year in. We have passed 1 year and we are recording with you, Josh Lazie. But once again, fans, I want to thank you so much at the Wrestling Chatter and take this moment here before we start talking. I want to thank you guys. It's been beyond awesome, bringing back these memories, reconnecting with a lot of people that a lot of us haven't seen in quite some time. So this has been very special. Thanks for all your comments and all your continued support after all these years. It's unbelievable. You know, people still asking questions, want to know all the ins and outs of XPW to this day. So that's, you know, it's pretty cool. And we've been doing this, like I said, for a year now. And thank you once again. On the 15th and 30th of every month, we've been consistent. And ladies and gentlemen, here we go. My guest on Xtreme Memories today, this evening, the one and only Josh Lazie. He was vice president at one point. We'll get into all that, what your role was in XPW, because when you came in, you were high up in the offices, all that, and that was in the early stages of XPW. And of course, man, managing one of the all-time greats, one of the all-time greatest icons in professional wrestling. We're talking about Sabu, and we had Sabu on here on Xtreme Memories on the Wrestling Chatter channel, and he talked fondly about you in his career. One of the most premier managers that he ever had was yourself, Josh Lazie. So, and not only in XPW, but you traveled around the world with Sabu when he represented XPW as the XPW World Heavyweight Champion, defending the title all over. So we'll get into that. But man, Lazie, we were talking a little off air, and I felt like I was some guys I hit it off with, some guys I did, and I always enjoyed your presence, and I always enjoyed working with you. And we talked music a little bit, obviously, to get into that because you were in Danzig, bass player for Danzig, and then that kind of coincides with the original XPW TV intro song. So we'll get into all that. There's a lot of stuff to get into. A great song, by the way. Good for wrestling. It was just great for that time. So, Josh Lazie, before we get into it, welcome. And how are you these days, my friend?
I'm great, man. It's been a long time, man. And this is the 1 year anniversary show?
Well, we started doing this actually on the anniversary. Our producer had a great idea. He said, let's do it on July 31st, 2020. And that was the anniversary of the first ever XPW show. So we're right around July, August now. And so, yeah, man, so it's been a year. So it flew by like that. And thanks to COVID, this happened because I kind of been out of the wrestling scene. And I was approached with this idea a couple of years ago. I just couldn't do it with work, with family. And then when COVID hit, it's like, let's do it, So this has been a blessing in a way. So again, thank you all the fans that are still listening.
In a lot of ways for a lot of people. I think a lot of people got to do stuff that they normally wouldn't have done like this. I'm like I told you off air, like I'm honored to be here, man. I kind of always think that people forget that I was even a part of XPW, and so I'm stoked to do it, and I'm stoked to be here on the 1 year anniversary ish of it. And like you said, it's like you and I always had a great relationship. It like any person who can admit that the Scorpions is his all-time favorite band is good.
I'm not representing today, but you're right. You're right. The Scorpions, number one for me, and so we kind of always talk because you were a big UFO fan, and anybody that knows the history, Michael Schenker, UFO, MSG Group, Rudolph Schenker, his brother, Scorpions, and Michael and Rudolph started the Scorpions, and then Michael and Rudolph came back to Love Drive. But that is not what we're talking about. But you and I could go on forever with that.
We could.
But yeah, Josh Lazie, tell the fans right now. Before we get into, look, you're obviously a talented musician. You've fulfilled many dreams and becoming part of a major band. Danzig kind of tied in, like we're talking Scorpions and UFO kind of tied in. Look, Danzig, the Misfits, it's all kind of tied in together. But before we get into all that, what's your background as far as professional wrestling before XPW? How did you get into liking the business and eventually getting into the business?
I mean, I grew up a wrestling fan. I grew up, I'm a native Angelino, so I grew up going to the Olympic Auditorium and watching wrestling. And I went to the Olympic Auditorium and I watched the Fabulous T-Birds with Stan the Man and Ralphie Valadares and Skinny Minnie Gwen Miller and it was so I grew up watching wrestling, and then I grew up watching WWF and just kind of following wrestling, and it was something that I always followed because I think more than anything else, like the mysticism behind professional wrestling was like, it was like I'm one of those dudes. I love magic. Like I love magicians, I like street magicians and all that shit, David Blaine type stuff. Like I love that stuff. And essentially that's what wrestling is. Like that like you believe that, this baby face dude is like going to save the world from this heel. And it's like, and even though at your core, you're like, this is all bullshit. You're like, you're invested and you're in, and the sleight of hand is there and the puff of smoke and the curtain gets pulled and everything. And it was something that I always loved. Like I was always a wrestling fan. And I never even entertained getting into the business. And it's funny, like you mentioned the Danzig thing. If it wasn't for Danzig, I wouldn't have come across XPW. So that's kind of how it happened.
And that actually, speaking of like other interviews we did where you came up again, you came up on one of my favorite interviews that we did. It was myself and Pat Ho with Larry Rivera, and he was on. Yeah, he was on too. That one, him and I, we did everything together. So that was just a blast, man. And but anyway, you came up and you got, of course, you were the reason he came into XPW. And one of the great ribs, I think you were involved in it, I brought it up, was like when he came into that meeting and I met him for the first time. I don't know if it was you, Kevin, or Rob, or all three of you. You came up to me like, "Hey, Kloss, man, we tried you out, dude." But I'm like, and then quickly you guys squash it, because I came up to Rivera like, "Who the fuck is this guy? Damn it!"
Like, White, we were like, yeah, because that was actually my job at XPW, was letting people go, and I was like, "Hey, man, I really hate to do this. Like, it's nothing personal. I like you and stuff." And you were just like, I could see you kind of went white, and then you kind of started to turn red, and I was like, dude, I'm totally fucking with you. Like, don't even.
And then, you're like, no. This is like your Gorilla Monsoon, Bobby Heenan, dude. You're good. You're good. Yeah. I still remember that because that hit me. But so okay, Josh. So you were a fan growing up. You talk about being an Angelino, same as myself. We have a little bit of an age gap, not much. I just barely missed the end of the Olympic Auditorium era. And I was kind of going to shows at the very beginning of the LA Sports Arena era, when WWF basically took over and all that. But so did you?
When they couldn't sell out the Coliseum for WrestleMania?
No, well, yeah. Supposedly they sold out the LA Coliseum for WrestleMania 7. You mean, right?
WrestleMania 7, and for the Iraq War they moved it or whatever it was.
I don't know if you were with us. I think it was myself. I'm glad you brought this up. It's a funny story. Okay. So I went to WrestleMania 7. I didn't go to WrestleMania 2. I should have, whatever. I remember it was a school night. I couldn't go. Can you freaking believe? But anyway, it was a school day. It was on a Monday, WrestleMania 2. So I remember I couldn't go for it. But anyway, WrestleMania 7, to recap the fans, it was going to be held at the LA Coliseum. They advertised it a year before at WrestleMania 6, first time they ever did that. And leading up, even up to Royal Rumble 91, they were still hawking tickets for WrestleMania 7, but they sold close to 40,000 in a stadium that was going to hold over 100,000. And tickets were going down. Wrestling was starting to die out popularity-wise. So they made the excuse. And I remember I got my LA Coliseum's ticket stub. And if I can find that, I'll bring that on the show. And I remember I had to send it in to the LA Sports Arena, Figueroa Street, and they mailed me back a Sports Arena ticket. So the Sports Arena only held 16,000. So there were a lot of people that got refunded that because they did sell more than that, but they didn't near close to selling out the Coliseum. Okay,
huge. Like for people who haven't been in the Coliseum, it's named the Coliseum for a reason. Like you walk in there and you're like, this place is gigantic.
Did you go, by the way, a few years, like maybe like 10 years ago when they did the Dodgers Red Sox preseason game? Did you go to that game?
Yes.
I went to that. Dude, and it was like when you see baseball and you know how big Dodger Stadium, and then you see baseball, you compare that to the Coliseum, then you get a really great idea of how different, how much bigger it is than Dodger Stadium.
Yeah. And Dodger Stadium is big. Like it's crazy. But
so I'm glad you brought this up because we so WWF put out this whole press, hey, look, the Iraq war is going on. We can't have security issues, blah, blah, blah. We're going to move it safer inside next door to the LA Sports Arena. And so people were always scratching their heads. So the first time we went to look at the LA Sports Arena before we started doing shows there, it was myself, Rob, Kevin, and I think Webb. And the four of us were in the car. We went to the Sports Arena to check it out. And so we're walking through it with the Sports Arena Commission. We're walking with all the guys. And it hit me. I'm like, oh, hey, I was talking to like the main guy, some Jack Tunney looking guy, like old gray hair. He was the boss, basically. And I'm like, oh, hey, by the way, when you guys had WrestleMania 7 and it had to move to the Coliseum, before I can even finish my question, he goes, no, they couldn't sell tickets. That's why they came here. That's why they were. Yeah. You mean the what? No, that was all bullshit. They couldn't sell tickets. They were lucky it was open. They were looking at the Forum, but the Lakers were playing, and they were actually lucky there was nothing here that day, and they got it. Yeah. It was like matter of fact. No, that was just
that's the wrestling magic, and everyone believed it. Like it took you 20 years to like crack the case.
10 years. Yeah. But and I remember walking through there, talking with them, and it was so matter of fact, and we kind of knew it. And by the way, the WrestleMania history of WrestleMania DVD that they put out maybe 5 years ago, they covered every WrestleMania, and they used that same story to this day. And another thing they said was, well, it worked out because it was a cold, rainy day in LA. It's like, no, it wasn't. You guys are building. I remember it was blue skies that day, man. But no, like you said, that's a good point, man. It's like, that's the magic of wrestling. You got to work it all the time. And that's, I think we, in a way, I'll speak for myself, but you talking as a fan, we kind of knew that growing up. But then when we got in the business, we're in the locker room, we're on this. I always talk about this, how honor it was to finally be operating on the inside part of the curtain in wrestling.
Yes.
It really was. And I've talked to Rivera about this, and he held that in high regard too, and paying homage to not only the stars, but just the business itself and taking it seriously, which why I always can't understand anybody that disrespects that part. I can never like, dude, you're here. You're behind the curtain. You finally made it, and you're gonna mark out for yourself, or your ego's gonna want to tell a fan what's really up so you can feel good. Like, dude, you just. But those guys got weeded out usually.
Those guys definitely got weeded out, and they got weeded out in the locker room. And like through my experience with professional wrestling, it's like I came in and I held it in high regard, and I had this respect, and I took what I was doing very seriously. But then once I got connected with Sabu, that just kind of happened by accident, and we can talk about that later. Like, my knowledge and my respect for wrestling just like kind of shot through the roof when I saw how people around the world treated Sabu, and when I got to sit with the Sheik and hear what the Sheik had to say, and sit with Bruce Hart and sit with Onita and sit with all these guys, and it was like, wow, man, like, I wasn't at that point, I wasn't representing me, and I was representing XPW, but I was really representing Sabu, and that really, really meant something to me. It's fucking Sabu, dude, and it's say whatever you want, but that guy, and I've seen it all over the world. Like, he just gets respect, and he doesn't necessarily command respect or ask. He just gets it because he's a humble dude who respects the business.
Right. And actually, you know what? It's funny. And I want to pay tribute right here now that you brought him up, because we had him and Super Genie on, and I'm sure you've heard she unfortunately passed away. And that was actually the final interview she ever did, was when she came on with Sabu. And look, she basically said that too, where he's not a braggadocious guy at all.
Not at all.
Not at all. And
he's the most humble guy. It's like he truly is the most humble guy. One of the most humble guys I've ever met in my life. 100%.
Especially for his position. Like he, we talk about with XPW, and I'll ask you right now, when you got into XPW and you saw the guys that came out of Southern California and the Slammers wrestling gyms, the SECW, which Kevin and Patrick and Dynamite D ran, and I was a part of, and then forming this thing, and then the outside established talent was coming in, your Sabus, your Candidos, your Shane Douglases, etc., Tracy Smothers, the list goes on. And the comparison from that, whereas I know we had to bring those guys in to sell product, to sell DVD, but Sabu was one of those guys in that group that, and I don't want to name names about the other guys I mentioned because some were different than others, but I'm just saying Sabu never walked around like he was better than the unestablished talent of, let's say, Southern California before Supreme got big, before the Messiah got big, before Chaos got big, Homeless Jimmy, all that. Because when he came in, it's like, oh, just put me wherever, where Hoovy, or I don't want to say bad about Hoovy, but I just remember, like, what? I got to come in and put Chaos over, but he's that guy, I'm this guy, like I never remember Sabu ever talking like that.
Never.
Yeah.
Never. Even I know, like, I remember, like, there was rumors going around that when Messiah won the belt, when I actually did the match against Messiah, people were saying that, Sabu didn't want to put Messiah over, which was 100% not the truth.
Right.
That wasn't the case at all. I mean, Sabu just wasn't in town. Like, that's it. There's no real magic to it. He just wasn't there. And at that time, a little heat started forming between us, and, they wanted to get the belt off of Sabu. But Sabu, which, again, we could get into later, like, Sabu really put a lot of guys in XPW over, and
he put the company over.
He put the company over, and anyone who says that he didn't is fucking full of shit. Because I was there, I sat in all those meetings. I flew around the world because, no disrespect to Sabu, but while he's really smart and has really good fucking ideas in the business, he's not necessarily the best talker, and he doesn't feel comfortable talking. So he was like, here's what we're going to do. You're going to sell it. Go. And that was our relationship, traveling all over the world, which we were kind of doing unbeknownst to XPW. And we were doing kind of our own thing while we were traveling, but we were always defending the title, and we were always trying to put guys over. And that was Sabu's doing. Because me, if I walk into Onita's office and I'm like, hey, I got this idea for an exploding death match, Onita's going to be like, get the fuck out of here, dude. You know, who are you? And he's right. Like, who am I? But so Sabu never had a problem. And he actually loved a lot of the homegrown talent. And so did I. Like Homeless Jimmy, man. We both loved Homeless Jimmy. To this day, that is one of my favorite gimmicks ever. And Jimmy is like the nicest fucking dude ever. And then there was guys that like had some, like, let's take Chaos for instance. Like Chaos had all this natural talent to work, but he didn't have that thing at first. He busted his ass and got it. And the Messiah too. Like Messiah could work, but he was small and he couldn't necessarily cut the best promos and stuff. But the dude was ambitious as a motherfucker. And those guys worked to do that. And the guys that worked to do that, like, got over. And the guys that didn't. I mean, the only one who really didn't need to work a lot, but still worked, was Supreme. Because Supreme was just over. And it's when I came into the company, I was like, that's the dude. That's the dude. And that's the guy. And that's when I made the King of the Deathmatch tournament. I was like, Supreme's going to be the guy.
So we'll get into that. And it's funny because as you're listing these guys that eventually got it, I was going to say, but out the gate was Supreme and Pogo.
The thing that bums me out about Pogo's gimmick, the only thing is some people just didn't get it. And it's like, it's a horrific gimmick, dude.
I know.
Bro, that is like, you have crossed the line totally, which I love.
Yeah.
And I just wish like more people got it. People are like, who's this clown? It's like, dude, you dick, you know. But and again, Pogo was the nicest dude ever. I think we worked for him like up north somewhere. We went on some road trip with him.
Right on. So backing up just a tad, Lazie, when you got involved, growing up a fan, but when you got involved or when you first heard about pro wrestling, was that your initiation into professional wrestling? Did you do some stuff, or was XPW the beginning of you in the wrestling industry?
XPW was the beginning of me in the wrestling industry. Like I was always in entertainment, but in music.
Right.
And, you know, it was like wrestling at that point seemed kind of like an unattainable goal. And, you know, and music was the thing that I wanted to do. And wrestling was like, it was this big thing, which is crazy when you're like, dude, I could be a rock star easier than I can be a manager. And I never wanted to be, I never saw myself as a wrestling personality, but I had ideas for like storylines and gimmicks and shit like that. And when, just to kind of jump ahead, you know, I was actually, this is kind of like how I got introduced to XPW, is we were playing a show. We were in Danzig. We were playing a show somewhere, like, I don't know, like in Texas or New Mexico or something. And there was like some wrestling stuff on the show. It was called, the show had some corny ass name, like December to Dismember or something like that, like super corny, right? And Jasmine was there. And Jasmine and I had been friends for quite a while before that. And Jasmine was like, hey, I'm doing this thing. I'm here with these wrestlers. This is what I'm doing now, like professional wrestling. And when you get back to LA, I want to bring you like to see this promotion that I'm working for.
So how did Jasmine know that you were into wrestling, or did she just say this to you, not knowing that you had a love for pro wrestling?
Oh, well, Jasmine knew I had a love for it, and I was also at that show. I was also watching all the wrestling. Like it was fucking awful, but it was just dudes just taking huge gnarly bumps that meant nothing. But Jasmine was there, and she was like doing the valet thing or manager thing, and she knew I was a fan. Like we had talked about it before, and it was actually one of those. It was like the conversation you and I had, where it was like, I love the Scorpions. I was like, I love UFO, and then the conversation just started from there.
Yeah.
So that's how that's how we knew. And then when I got back to Los Angeles, she actually called me and she said, "Hey, we're doing a show tonight, an XPW show in Hollywood.
Yeah,
you should come." And I went, and it was like at some like fucking abandoned movie theater.
that was the Vogue Theater on Hollywood, right off of, I believe, Cherokee.
Yeah, that's like, it was like it used to be a theater, now it's like a Mexican church or something, like something weird. The place was weird, and I went to the show, and I was like, and I went and I watched the show, and it was killer, and I was like, man, this is the beginning. I genuinely, I was watching it and I was going, it's not there yet, but this is like the beginning of something cool. Like this is the beginning of something really cool. And I went backstage with Jasmine, and I met Rob and Tommy. I met a couple of the guys or whatever. And then Rob was like, "Hey, you should, come out to the office and, have lunch or something like that." And Jasmine took me out of the office, and Rob and I started talking about wrestling, and we just kind of hit it off. And I was,
That's another thing too that got brought up on the show, was like when you came in there and you brought, like we were talking before, we got to for a little while, you can clarify, but we got to use your song for the intro to XPW TV.
Yeah.
But when you came in, you kind of brought that connection. You brought some hookups too, right? Because you, if I'm not mistaken, were instrumental in us getting certain venues. Wasn't the LA Sports Arena one of them, or the Olympic, or
it was the Palace? We got like the
Palace, yeah.
The Palace. We got the Palace, and then we had guys like Jonathan Davis came out from did some ring stuff. My friend Kerry King from Slayer came out.
Yeah, the lead singer of Slayer, Kerry King. I've never lived that.
I didn't want to bring it up,
dude. I remember I was, because I seen Slayer, man. I thought of all the times to fuck something up, and I had the card. It said Jonathan Davis at Korn, and then on the next to it, lead singer Kerry King. So I'm just reading it, you know what I'm saying? And I'm like, and right after I said, I'm like, oh shit.
If we're really, really quiet right now, just like really quiet, you can go back to 1999 and you can hear people chanting, "You fucked up."
And you know what, brother? I accept all of those chants, dude.
It is. I don't even care. He was just stoked to be there because Kerry's a huge wrestling fan too.
Oh, dude, he didn't even care. Like the fans were more pissed than he was. He was like, "Nah, dude, I'm not the lead singer, But
he's Kerry King. It doesn't matter,
right? But so yeah, you were instrumental in that. The Palace, which became Avalon later, and all right on Hollywood and Vine, a nice venue. Big deal for us to get into that at that time too. And that's where the original King of the Deathmatch was held. Yeah. And of course, Supreme won that, the late, great Supreme. And kind of set the stage because the fans weren't really getting that hardcore style deathmatch in the US. They got the stuff in ECW, but we did take it to the next level with the glass, with some of the stuff. The brutality, again, the blood. We in some ways it was taken to the next level. As far as
100%, not to cut you off, but 100%. And it was, I mean, I'll be honest, and I'm not trying to talk shit on anyone or anything, but no one even knew what a deathmatch tournament was before I got there.
Right.
Like Kevin didn't know, Rob didn't know, no one knew. And the funny thing is, the reason why I know about death matches is from Pat Hood, Larry Rivera.
Japan tapes.
All the Japan stuff.
Yeah.
Because he would be at this, they used to have this comic book show, I think it was like monthly at the Xtreme Auditorium. And Pat and I were friends from he was in Brujeria and Foreign Object, whatever. And so we were friends from the music scene and from the punk rock scene. And he would be at the Xtreme Auditorium at the comic book convention with Hollywood Book and Poster. Mm-hmm. And so Hollywood Book and Poster would be peddling their wares or whatever. And Pat would be over there, or Larry, whichever, would be over there with his little VHS tapes and his little TV, like showing these wrestling tapes. And I'd go, it was like, all right, brother, what do you got? And he's like, oh man, I think Pat was the one who sold me a copy of those bloody matches.
Okay.
And it was like, and all that stuff. Cause you got like, it wasn't pre-internet. Pat and I were friends pre-internet, but it wasn't as readily available. Like you couldn't just Google like, New Japan Wrestling, Exploding Deathmatch, and just something would pop up, So this was still, I mean, these were VHS tapes, man. And we had all this New Japan stuff and this Onita stuff and All Japan and those bloody matches and all this Abdullah the Butcher stuff and Bruiser Brody and Invader number 3 and like all this stuff that we would just mark the fuck out on. And I remember like, when I came to XPW, I was like, Rob, man, I'm like, no one's ever done it. No one's ever done it right. We should do a King of the Deathmatch tournament and like pay homage to Japan. And that's why we had the trophy and like all that stuff. Because that was the Japanese way. You'd win an actual trophy at the end of the King of the Deathmatch tournament or the Deathmatch tournament or whatever. And he was like, man, he's like, what the fuck are you talking about? And so I started giving him all these tapes, like, and I showed him and Kevin, and I sold Lester on it. I was like, Supreme, dude, you're going to be the guy. And I'm like, watch this. This is how this does. I'm like, you're going to get the trophy. You're going to get the belt. You're going to do everything. And he watched it. And the next time he came in, like whatever, the next day or whatever, and was like, I'm in, like 100%. And that was, to my knowledge, the first promotion to ever really do a deathmatch tournament in the United States.
And man, speaking of that, like, so ECW was doing hardcore stuff, but not to this extreme. But even besides that, it was introducing that style, like you said, paying homage to the Japanese death matches and all that, but also completely introducing, say ECW's there already, fine, completely introducing the West Coast to anything close to this.
Anything close to it. Like, look, we all know in the very beginning, and for a long time, XPW was just like the West Coast offshoot, like copy of ECW, and ECW was fucking amazing. There's
absolutely.
And the thing I always liked about ECW is they always paid homage to, Japan and to all these, all these places. There was a lot of respect there. And everyone on the West Coast was just like getting ECW videos or, some weird pay-per-view on, some like crazy channel or something, trying to get ECW wherever we can. But to have that at that time, even with the huge bumps, but an actual King of the Deathmatch tournament in California, in Los Angeles, the first time on the West Coast, like the fans were fucking rabid for it, because Los Angeles wrestling, like there's a huge history of professional wrestling in Los Angeles, and And true Angelinos know that, and they love it, and they live it, and they're fucking smart, man. They're very, very smart fans.
Yeah, because I remember kind of thought it was very cool. Like we had a young fan base, of course, but I remember seeing in the crowd and meeting some of the fans that were a little bit older that were just like, oh, finally, like the territory style, the feel is back here in LA. Like it's not just the WWF at the sports arena or now whatever, Staples Center at the time. And actually, I think it was Staples Center just came in at that time. But anyway, but WWF coming here the same way they do across the country. Now we actually have our own identity once again that I saw 15, 20 years ago at the Olympic, and it doesn't feel like just an indie fed at a high school. Like this feels like that territory has come back to LA in the form of XPW, for better or for worse, whether you're a fan of the company or not. That's what happened. And it's funny, speaking of that, like a fan of the company, when we got, you had a great line, by the way, after we did the heat wave incident at Invasion of ECW. And then 1 week later, the XPW was at the LA Sports Arena. And then, you said, you know what, it's not too cool right now to be an XPW fan. And the crowd was cheering and all that. But I remember realizing at a certain point, we got more respect, I would say, but whether it's respect or not, we got more coverage and more press from foreign media at times than we did from U.S. media, because there was so much politics in, I don't think this league should succeed, or I like ECW better, where the foreign press, whether it was Japan, Europe, Mexico, they didn't have a dog in the fight, and they were just coming to see a wrestling promotion that was doing something that was, this is an established company. Wow, they're at the sports arena. They're at the Olympic. I felt that they were way more friendly to us. I don't know if you noticed that, but I remember kind of picking up on that.
100%. Like when I remember the first time Sabu and I went to Japan, like people were like hyped on XPW. And I was like, how the fuck did you even hear about XPW? But and in Mexico too, and Germany and England, like everywhere we went. And I think in the States, people couldn't get over the fact that, they were like, XPW is just kind of like a ECW knockoff. But back in the day, the territories used to fight like that all the time.
All the time.
All the time, man. And that was part of it. And the thing is, I think a lot of the foreign press, like you said, they didn't have a dog in the fight, but they liked the heat, man.
Yeah. Yes.
They liked the heat. And it's like, and there was heat. Like when I said in the ring in front of everyone, I'm like, it's not too cool to be an XPW fan right now, because we got completely shit on after the ECW incident. I wasn't there. I didn't have a part in it. And it was I think the worst thing, in my opinion, still to this day, I think the thing I feel bad about the most is that the street team got the shit kicked out of them. The XPW street team got the shit kicked out of them in the parking lot by the XPW locker room.
By the ECW
locker room. And they beat that chick up, man.
Yeah, they beat the girl. There was a girl that got attacked. It was really bad, and that never gets talked about. With looking back, like whose fault, and we did have there's blame on both sides, but that part always gets swept under the rug, and that was shameful.
It was shameful, and the thing is, it's like, listen, Paulie is not stupid. Like, he's a lot of things, but he is not fucking stupid. And they knew coming here. I mean, refresh my memory, Kloss. What was the name of the pay-per-view?
Heat Wave.
Come on. They're not talking about the fucking weather. They knew exactly what they were doing. They were coming to California to send a message. to send a message to have the event be called Heat Wave. Like, they knew what they were doing. They were poking. Paul was smart. I think things didn't necessarily go his way. And if you watch the pay-per-view, like the guys that were there, Supreme and Chaos and all those guys, even you, I think.
Yeah.
Like, they got heat from the crowd, but also people were there were some XPW like supporters who were like, that's the thing that people don't understand, man. And you'll get it. It's like Los Angeles is such a transient town that people think it's just all these flighty people. It's not for people who are true Angelinos, born and raised Angelinos, like myself and like you. And if anybody ever says like, oh, there's no, I go, really? Go to a fucking Dodgers game.
Yeah.
Go to a Dodgers game, sit in the outfield, and tell me there aren't people who are proud of the city that they're from.
Of course.
And it's like, and while you're at it, put on a Giants jersey.
Well, LA is like, I mean, I lived in New York and LA, they're just so different. But LA is like filled with people that aren't from here.
Yeah.
So you have a lot of people that have their heart and soul with the city or the state they're from. So it seems like there's no pride here. But I always said, man, if you just got a lot of born in SoCal locals at a bar or something, then it would feel like a bar in New York or Chicago or Philadelphia at night watching a game, but it's just, unfortunately, we're all inundated by people that really aren't from here, and everyone talks shit about it because, well, why did you leave your home to come here then?
Yeah, exactly. But I bet you, and that was the thing about XPW. XPW was that local hometown bar. Right. And that's why, like, people were so proud of XPW, even though sometimes the product was fucked up and we had weird bumps and storylines were crazy. It's like, it was theirs. It was ours.
Yes.
It was the home of Los Angeles. And I bet you anything, if you went to the sports arena or the Olympic Auditorium and you asked everybody, if you took a poll, like where you're from, 99% of the crowd would say born and raised in Los Angeles.
Right.
And that was their home. That was their hometown promotion. That was their territory. And they claimed the territory. And even when we went to Strongbow Stadium, which was one of my favorite places, dude, come on.
Really?
Loved it.
Yeah, it was that. Now you want to talk old school, brother.
Dude,
oh man.
I walked in there and I remember I walked up to Pat and I was like, dude, like Larry was there. And I remember I was like, this is fucking weird. And he was like, I didn't even know it was still there. Right. Who knew? When is the last time someone said Strongbow Stadium in a sentence?
Yeah.
Since 1921. No one said anything about Strongbow Stadium. And we were there. I was like, holy shit, man, this is well. And they showed up. Those shows were off the hook.
Yes. Yeah. It was cool when we traveled in Ventura, San Bernardino, Bakersfield, LA, of course. And in that same weekend, it was like, damn, people are coming in all these different places and they knew what was going on with the product. Yeah. And it was great. And you're right, Itty, like you said, you went to the Vogue Theater to check it out, to first meet everybody. And you kind of had to feel like, well, this is good, but it's on to something. And it's true. Like, it was on to something. And, like you said, it was a beautiful thing that basically kind of evolved into, okay, we're doing this thing. Oh, we're getting a little bit bigger. Oh, wow. Look at all the heart and soul of these Angelinos. Oh, wow. It's almost like you didn't expect or think of that part, just building a company. And it ended up being like a lot of people thinking that, oh, this is the territory system alive again in a way.
And that's exactly what it was. It was the territory system was alive again. A lot of people are too young to remember that, but that's exactly what it was. Like, people didn't understand it. And the thing that sucked is we had a lot of people kind of shitting on us locally on whatever that stupid message board was
SoCal Uncensored. Yeah.
SoCal Uncensored or whatever. Like those dudes would shit on us all the time. And it was like, well, do something better, you know,
Right.
do something better. Have, you know, hey, if we suck, here's what I want you to do. Have Shane Douglas come in and cut a promo for the fucking ages. Like,
right.
You know, so I think a lot, but again, there were those fans, those hardcore fans who like embraced XPW as theirs, like, and they were like, we're here till the wheels fall off. And that's really what made XPW special. And that's what I was, when towards the end, which we'll get into later, that was what I was really bummed out about, is I felt like we were like, the shit we were planning and the shit Sabu and I were working on for XPW was like something no one ever would have seen before. And no one ever, and it was all based on the territory systems. And it was like, and it would have been the stuff of legends, but we had Rob, who wasn't very savvy when it came to wrestling history. And we also kind of like, it was, we were suffering from too much too soon.
Yeah.
And you know, we had this us against the world attitude, which I thought was good as a work, you know, and it brought us a lot of heat. But at the same time, like, I think like what we were working on when we left, really could have just like rocketed us into something completely different that no one's ever done before.
It's interesting when you talk about, you know, the name Heat Wave and all that, and how historically in wrestling those were always done, the invasions, to the point where they even created angles later on with
ECW and WWF.
Yeah, so they would create angles with WCW, WWF, and they would have these like work angles, and the fans would eat it up. They would love that, right? To the point where they would work angles, and then when it happened for real, it's like to the fans, oh, that was messed up. That was fucked up that you guys did that. Dude, then why do you like it when it's angry?
Did it? You know, like when New Jack left Jim Cornette and went to ECW. Like it was, you know, there was an angle to all of it. It's not anything that no one has ever done before and no one's ever seen. We just, ECW was like held in such this high kind of hardcore wrestling regard that anything said against them or anything done against them was just, it was like the fucking Crusaders, where someone would just yell blasphemy and everyone would be like, blasphemy, fuck them. But it's like, but all those people were at the shows because I mean, we had a lot of people at these XPW shows.
Yeah, right.
Like when the first show I went to at the Vogue Theater in Hollywood, there was like 3.5 people there, you know, and it was, you know, there was more than 3.5. There was people there, but it wasn't the thing that it turned into. And
right.
I think the thing that it turned into was the territory battle, because I mean, come on, the Battle of Los Angeles and New York, or Los Angeles and the East Coast, or East Coast, West Coast, is like an age-old tale. And that's just what was happening, you know, and everybody, all these smart motherfuckers, Dave Meltzers and all these guys, were just too fucking stupid to realize it. And we're just like, holy shit, like these dudes are working this angle like that. And that's what I was like working with Rob. I'm like, we have to do this. And, you know, and Rob is like, you know, you could say whatever you want about Rob, but when it comes to like, if chaos and mayhem were an art form, Rob is fucking Picasso. You know, like, you know, and it's funny that now people, you know, like we're sitting here 20 years later talking about, you know, what we were doing. But at the time it was like we were getting a lot of heat, and it was hard, man, because that XPW, that ECW heat, like it was like, fuck, that was hard to overcome. We got completely shit on for something that was like nothing. Like, I mean, you guys were wearing t-shirts at the show. Like, that was it.
And it's funny because, yeah, there you go. There's the folklore of the magician aspect of pro wrestling. When you see something, it must be bigger than what I'm seeing, you know. And then the fans almost gave themselves this story of their own, and you know, if it's on their pay-per-view, well, this must be a bigger deal than what they say it is, or what have you, because everything's bigger than life in wrestling. But it's funny how when something like that happens for real, and what was that era of pro wrestling? It was getting away from the cartoony stuff. Fans wanted realism in the late 90s, early 2000s. So, and when something happened for real, that's why I always, whether you liked or on ECW, Team ECW, Team XPW, it was like, why don't tell me you want real stuff then? If something that happened for real is too much for you.
Yeah, everybody wanted the curtain pulled back, and everybody wanted something that they could identify with. It's like, come on, what are we going to do? Are we going to bring fucking Coco Beware out or something? It's like, who do you want to see, man? We have two matches. One is Coco Beware headlining, and one is Tommy Dreamer. Like, what do you want to see? Everyone's going to be like Dreamer, you know. It's and it's that stuff is gone. It's still gone. Like, it's, you know, I think wrestling today has kind of lost its way, and they're like in this weird kind of abyss trying to find out, like, where are we? Like, what exactly are we doing here? And a lot of these gimmicks are just fucking stupid, and they're out of ideas, and they need some younger people in there writing stuff, I think.
They're out. I agree with you. They're out of ideas, and now they're so limited on what they can do.
Yes.
Again, you know, like no more foreign villains, and the list goes on and on of things they can't do. Combine that with, like you said, you're right. You combine that with they've done everything to death. It's like, yeah, that's a good point, man. It's kind of is in this, like what you say, abyss of like confusion, and they're in limbo right now in a way.
They just don't have an identity. They don't know who they are, and they're trying to rely on kind of like old gimmicks and old kind of storylines that are played out. Like, they need a firmware update, man. And it's and the dudes who are just booking and writing for WWF, just kind of for WWE, are just kind of like, they're out of ideas. They're old dudes, man, and the world is kind of passed them by, you know. And like, they had their time, and they had such a great time, and it's, you know, but they won't. They're still holding on to that, you know, secret magic trick, the magic of the trick. And everybody's kind of like, dude, we know it's like there's an ace up your sleeve. We know that it's that, because there's only really so much you can do. It's like, you got run-ins, you got this, you got that. But I think it's kind of lost its way. And, you know, they're just waiting for another like Stone Cold Steve Austin to come out and just like blow the thing up, where it's like, you know, and then everybody's back in it.
And in so many ways, when we did our thing, there were some stagnant things in wrestling. So for XPW to come along and, oh my gosh, these guys are doing stuff that I don't think they're supposed to do, or I'm going to see an XPW show and I don't totally feel safe. I don't feel like this is totally regulated. The element of danger, you know, and that was the feel at almost every XPW show. How many times we lied to the fire marshal? How many times?
And the thing is, and you know, Kloss, because you were there. It's like a lot of that stuff, like, we were flying by the seat of our pants. We didn't know what was going to happen. Just as an example, like when Terry Funk and Sabu wrestled, the XPW logo wasn't supposed to come crashing down and nearly kill everyone. Like, dude, that wasn't a spot. That wasn't discussed. That was like, whoa. And didn't like Gary or Tool or someone like,
ironically, Tool built that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
that wasn't supposed to come like, Lester wasn't supposed to be set on fire.
Yep, right.
There was a lot. We were flying by the seat of our pants, and we were just like kind of go big or go home. So there was that like element of like someone might fucking die. We don't know what's happening, But
dude, and like speaking of that, because we talked to Sabu about that spot where that whole entrance came down, and that wasn't just like styrofoam or whatever. That was like metal and wood, and that was a heavy set.
Yeah.
And you look back at that, the crazy thing is too, not just the referee, camera crew, or Funk and Sabu, but that entrance was on the floor right around the freaking seats where the fans were.
Yeah.
It easily came into the audience, dude.
It could have happened. And it wasn't like, I'm not trying to, blow anything up or anything. It was not a spot. No. I was backstage when the spots were called, and that was not a spot. 100% not a spot. And I remember when it happened, like Sabu looked at me, he was like, "What the fuck?" I was like, "Just keep going, brother." Terry loved it,
Wow. And to show you how easy that giant set came down, that was kind of metaphorical right there of how we did things with XPW. Like, anything could go wrong. I know it looks gigantic, but anything can go wrong. And that's and an honor for me that Terry Funk came up and clobbered me when he was attacking everybody, and he attacked me. So I was like, that was probably at that time my biggest and most honored moment. Kind of like the one time you experienced, and I'm trying to remember what show it was, but where you got the fork treatment from Abdullah the Butcher, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a picture, I think it was like on a calendar or something, and it's me with my neck against the ropes, and Abdullah, has me with the fork, and Sabu's on top of Abdullah. We're all a bloody mess. I mean, like, that to me, like, that's it. I could have walked out of XPW right then and just been like, conquered it. I'm done.
Yeah.
And it was great. And I had a lot of experiences like that in XPW. I mean, honestly, like, if it wasn't for Terry Funk and Shane Douglas, I don't think Sabu and I would have been together.
How so? How did that come about?
The whole storyline of Rob coming out and being the owner, and then me taking over the company and blah blah blah, that was all me and Shane Douglas.
Oh, okay.
Like, me and Shane came up with that in mostly Shane, and we came up with that in Shane's hotel room. And Rob didn't like it, but Rob wasn't going to say no to Shane, because at that time Shane was the franchise. He was going to be the XPW franchise guy, and whatever Shane said goes. He just cut that promo that had everybody crying like bitches at the XPW office, watching it over and over and over again for a week. And Kloss, am I wrong?
No, you're exactly right. And you know what? I mean, to the point where, all right, it was a movie theater. The lights went out.
Yeah.
The screen was on. And I remember I talked about this a couple times where it's like, when we talked about before, like the local guys, this is our league. Oh, but we're bringing these stars in. And I remember, like, when I saw that, I was like, wow, this is amazing. This is cool. And this feels like we've arrived in a way. But that meeting room, there were a lot of local guy murmurs like, what the hell? Like, we don't need these guys. Like, where are we going to be, back of the bus? That's just the way it was, though. And I understand both sides of it.
And I get it. And that being said, like, everybody was given their chance to, like, prove their worth and to stay on. And if you think about it, most of the people that didn't stay on, I know because I'm the one that fired them.
Yeah.
Were people, not saying that it was my decision to fire them. I was just the bearer of bad news, because Rob is super non-confrontational. Dick Dudley, Nicole Bass, there was a lot of outside talent that was already there that was let go before guys like, Dynamite D, I think, was still there when I left,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He was, yeah.
Yeah, Homeless Jimmy was just over. Chaos, fucking over. Supreme, over. The Messiah, over. You know, Damian Steele was one of the guys that fell to the wayside, which was that was like, and oddly enough, Jasmine St. Clair, who brought me to XPW, eventually was gone. I don't know what happened there. It was before I was actually there, but Damian Steele, you know, like he could have stayed. I just don't think he would have been, and not, you know, shitting on Damian or nothing. I don't even really know the guy all that well, but you know, he could have stayed, and the guys that did stay, like, rose to the occasion and were part of something special. And I get it, when you bring in outside talent, it's like, you know, fuck, you know, when I brought in Pat, you were like, what the fuck, I'm out of here. And look at, like, you and Pat, it's like there is some classic commentating on the it's like, I think, well, I guess it is history now because it's 20 years. When you go back and you listen to some of that stuff, it's like, it's so good. It's up there with the rest of them. And it's for two young guys who are doing stuff. It's like I love that Larry Rivera didn't break character for people for a long time.
Long time, man. Yeah.
He worked everyone and no one knew. And he would be like, you know, he'd walk through the office and he'd be like, oh yeah, blah, blah, blah. And he'd say shit, and he'd come into my office. He'd be like, dude, don't tell anyone. I'm like, you're good with me, bro. This is wrestling. Like, be the dude you want to be, you know? And even dudes like Webb, White Trash Johnny Webb was one of my favorite guys, like, just as a human and as a talent in XPW. Like, he could fucking work. He had a great mind for wrestling. He could bump, and he just like he got it, you know. Yeah. He got it, and he stayed. So there was those grumblings, and I think people were just scared. But at the same time, I bet you if you asked them now, they're all glad they were a part of it, because none of us knew what was going to happen. We were flying by the seat of our pants, man, and we didn't know if there was going to be money for one show from the next, and if we were going to get paid, and what was going to happen. And if Rob was just like, hey man, I can't pay you for the show, here's 27 porno CDs, like, good luck, brother, you know, or whatever, you know. So we were flying by the seat of our pants. And, you know, as badly as it ended with me, it's like I have nothing bad to say about my time in XPW. I fucking loved it, and like, it's a part of California history, man. Like it or not, love us or hate us,
right?
We fucking killed it.
Speaking of, we'll get into that, or your departure and all that, and I want to talk about you and Sabu and a big missed opportunity. But when you talked a little bit about Rob, but one thing I was going to mention earlier was when you first came into the office and we kind of understood your position. I mean, it felt like you and Rob were friends for a long time, but you guys had just met.
Yeah, we just met, and we just really hit it off. What happened was I came to the office and I met Rob, and we hit it off. And again, we started talking about music. Rob was like this big Metallica guy, and
yeah,
you know, it was Metallica everything.
Yeah, everything. Yeah,
I'm like, dude, there are other bands. Just there's a whole bunch of other bands, but so when I came to the office that time, when Jasmine brought me down and introduced me to Rob and Tom Byron and Lizzie and everyone, Rob and I stayed in contact, and we talked, and we went out to dinner one night, and I think I was still in Danzig, and we were going to go play a show somewhere, and he said, hey, we're going to, I don't think I've ever talked about this. He said, hey, we're going to the AVN Awards in Vegas. He goes, why don't you come out and you can drive home with us, and we'll like set you up, you know, we'll get you a hotel, like the whole thing, blah, 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 blah. And at that, like, I'm not stupid. I knew what Rob was trying to do, and he was trying to, like, you know, just whatever, like, you know, butter me up to get me into this company. Right. And so I went to Vegas, and that's where I met Christy Mist, who later became my girlfriend. And,
right.
You know, and again, like, I'm not stupid. Rob was kind of like told Christy, like, hey, take care of this dude. I don't think he knew what was going to, I don't think any of us knew what was that her and I were going to, start some sort of relationship or whatever. And we drove home. And when we were driving home from Vegas, it was myself, Rob, Tom Byron, and Lizzie Borden. And Rob and I kind of just talked wrestling the whole way. Like no one else said anything. And I was like, dude, you should do this and you should do this. And there's this idea and this is what I saw and this is what's lacking and blah, 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 blah. And we hit it off. And it's kind of like from that point, we were inseparable. And, and we just kind of lived and breathed XPW to the point of where I was like, I'm going to see this through. And I quit the band and went to work full time for XPW and for Xtreme. Like I kind of had some weird title at Xtreme just to kind of, so I could get paid.
Right.
And we were inseparable for a long time. And we had, and Kevin too. And we had a pretty fucking strong relationship. And it was like, it was all really based around this love for XPW, for this company.
Right. Wow. Yeah. So, I mean, you came in with the ideas and then of course, like we talked before, the death match, which ironically Supreme was doing his thing on the independent scene, but that really introduced, and he's become the folklore now. He's this death match legend worldwide.
Yeah.
So tragic, right? That he died. And we talked a lot about that and the guys who passed.
Dude ever. Like Lester was one of those dudes. Like if you had a problem with Lester or if you had something bad to say about Lester, it's probably because you're an asshole.
Yeah, you are the one that had the problem.
Yeah.
And I said that about Dynamite D was the same way. Like if you don't like him, like, well, what's your problem then? Type thing.
Dynamite D, I always kind of felt bad for just because he was like, he could work his ass off. Like he could work his ass off. He just didn't, and he was funny as shit too. But he didn't really have like that thing that just kind of gets you over with like the crowd. He was over with like the hardcore XPW guys, but it sucked, man, because he's such a nice guy and he worked so good. I was like, fuck, I want this guy to be over so fucking good, I wish he would have been.
He had so much respect in the locker room, dude.
Everybody loved him. Like,
dude.
He was the best worker in the locker room out of the local guys. Like,
he was. I mean, and nobody would ever, none of the workers would ever argue that for like, no, I'm a better worker. No one ever argued that about him. No one. But yeah, going back to like, Supreme basically, he kind of became this deathmatch wrestler because of XPW death matches.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny. I ran into him one time at the movies, and he was with his kid, and I was walking out of the movies. This was years later after XPW, and we ran into each other. And I was walking, and I hear Lazie, and I turn around, and it's Lester. I'm like, holy shit! And we start talking, and he was like, man, I always think about the conversation when you were like, dude, I'm gonna give you this videotape. You need to go home and watch it. You are going to be the king of the death match. And so like to play a small part in that is awesome because it couldn't have happened to like a nicer, more deserving individual than Supreme. Supreme is fucking awesome, man.
And just knowing that like, okay, he was going to be the guy, but then like almost taking it to the next level. Like when he was in there, as that deathmatch wrestler, like I just remember watching footage of him like taking all these shots to the head and really legit shoot, thinking to myself, damn, he can't get hurt, this guy. Like you believed it. Like, when you see guys from Japan, like your Stan Hansens or who else can I think of? Like certain guys that they do it, but you could tell it, or Mick Foley, like it's affecting them. And then you had those other guys who are like, dude, no one can hurt this guy. Like he doesn't care how hard he gets hit, or it doesn't even impact him. Like if someone gets into a fight with this guy, like there's no point, man. What are you going to do other than grab a fucking gun?
You know? He got set on fire. It was just like dirt on it, which was horrific. That was one of the most horrific things I've ever seen.
I know.
And even then, he was just like, I'm good, bro. Like, I was like, actually, you're not good. He's like, no, I'm good. I'm like, no, you are far from good, brother. Like, you look like a fucking piece of bacon right now. That was so gnarly.
But yeah, so I mean, that deathmatch tournament, that in so many ways, not just him, but it put a lot of guys on the map. Again, put the company on the map. Once again, we got that foreign press. And I think that was one of the reasons, especially Japanese press, where it was like they in Mexican and lucha wrestling, like wrestling's big in America, but we don't take it seriously like we do our own craft, especially lucha libre, right? They're not as welcoming as to American wrestling as, let's say, Japan is historically working with American wrestling. But either way, Japan, you know, there's no reason for Japan to cover the Royal Rumble or Bash at the Beach. Like it just doesn't mean anything to them on that level as to where when we started doing those death matches.
Yeah. I mean, Japan likes like WrestleMania and shit.
They like it, but it's not their thing.
No.
It's not, yeah.
They like the characters. They like the Hulk Hogan's and the Ultimate Warriors and these like way out characters. But when it comes to like what they want to see and what they go see, like Japan's like that's it. Like in my opinion, like for the wrestling that I like, that's the top of the mountain. Like that's it. That's, you know, that's the top of the mountain. And, you know, that's what we were trying to do and what we were trying to bring to XPW. And unfortunately, some people just didn't understand it.
Well, you know, speaking of Japan, Lazie, I've talked about this a couple times, but definitely want to talk and get your thoughts on this. Probably the biggest missed opportunity in company history. And I'm talking about Sabu, yourself, Atsushi Onita, the first ever exploding ring cage death match would have been in United States history. Now, this was when we were doing shows at the LA Sports Arena. And the last show we did there, Go Funk Yourself, of course, Terry Funk, Sabu, which got, again, a lot of international press and domestic as well. But now we start talking, okay, we're going to take the death match to the next level. Talk about the tapes that we would get from Japan, the FMW tapes with all this stuff that they would do over there. Unheard of in the United States. Yes, at the time. So the match was set. It was Onita represented by Rob Black. And then this was tied into the storyline where the company was like bouncing back and forth, the power struggle between yourself, Rob. And that was the whole thing with Larry was on the side of Rob. I was on the side of you, good guy, bad guy type thing, right? And so Onita came over and we did the whole thing, the press conference at the Airtel Plaza Hotel, Van Nuys, right down the street from our office. And we got the ballroom there and there was legit press was there. We had all the, you know, SoCal Uncensored, all the Bill Apter, I think, and all those photographers. And I remember it was KFI Radio was there, local LA radio, and I want to say ABC or CBS. One of them were there. It was a big deal. We had the whole press conference, came out. I mean, and I remember going there, and Rivera and I getting up there is like, okay, we do the TV shows. We're used to that now. We do the going into the crowd of the sports arena. And I remember feeling like this is fucking legit now. This is the actual media that we're hosting for this event. It was a special time. It was set. It was all set to go. Onita, Sabu, and the angle was set up where Onita was there with Rob talking about America doesn't know death matches. And then boom, you and Sabu come running into the office. Freaking let the room on fire, and it was the buildup was there. But talk a little bit about that because look, man, we had a lot of momentum at that time, XPW, and goddamn, would that have just put it to the moon, in my opinion, had that was followed through with?
Well, let me first talk about how we got to that point, because I think it's very, very important. What happened, like I said earlier, Shane Douglas started that storyline. It was Shane and I in the hotel, and he started that storyline of Rob and I having this power struggle for the company. And that being said, when I came to XPW, I never had the idea that I'm going to be an on-air personality or be a manager, or we're going to bring Sabu. Wasn't even a thought. Like, Sabu was the last thing we thought was going to happen in XPW. And with the way it worked out, the whole storyline for me and Shane was, we were, if I remember correctly, Kevin probably remembers better than I do, but at first we got Sabu in XPW, and then we lost him, and then we got him, and then we lost him. I kind of went like that a couple times because of contract stuff.
Right.
But Shane was with that was 100% positive we were going to get Sabu. So it was Shane's idea, and he said, you know, we're going to start this power struggle storyline, which is not a new story at all, but it was a good one. And eventually, I would be the one who brought Sabu to XPW, so that when Sabu first did that run-in on, I think it was Shane and Candido's match at the sports arena, I came out with them and I was like, I'm taking the company, blah, 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 whatever happened. And so Sabu kind of became my guy by default, but still we hadn't set up a manager thing or whatever. Then at Go Funk Yourself, we had the spot that, man, one of my only regrets in XPW is that they didn't catch the spot on TV where I came out with Sabu. Terry Funk and Sabu had their match, and then at the end of the match, Sabu threw fire at Terry Funk. Terry Funk blew fire at Sabu, and I jumped up on the side of the ring and blew fire on Terry.
Ah, right. Yeah. It just cuts off.
It just cuts off.
Yeah. You see the fireball. That's it.
It would have been a great spot. So we did the match, and afterwards we go back to the locker room, and Terry Funk says to me and Sabu, he said, you guys got something good. You got to stick together.
Wow.
And that was it. Now,
how do you not go forward with that after he says that?
Yeah, and that was kind of like the story. Like everywhere Sabu and I went, it was kind of the same story with people that we met who I have a tremendous amount of respect for in the professional wrestling business. So that's how Sabu and I came together. And Sabu was like, okay, man, if we're going to do this, we're going to do it right. And Sabu started mentoring me and coaching me and telling me like what we wanted to do and where we were going. And then Sabu and I started traveling. You know, we started defending the XPW belt in Canada at Stampede, and we went to England, and we went to Germany, and we went to Mexico a whole bunch, and we went to Japan a whole bunch. Now, what people didn't know is on the way to Japan, I think Japan, this was the first time Sabu and I ever went anywhere together. And I went to Michigan to meet. I went to Bombay, Michigan to stay with Sabu, and we talked to the Sheik. And Sheik said, this is what's going to happen. He said, you guys are going to go and you're going to defend this belt. And because this was already our plan, we were going to try and get XPW over internationally, which was actually Sabu's idea. It wasn't my idea. It wasn't Kevin's idea. And it wasn't Rob's idea. It was Sabu's idea. Like, that was 100% Sabu deserves all the credit for that. And the Sheik said, here's what we're going to do. And no one knew that we were doing this because we knew it wouldn't fly with Rob and Kevin. The Sheik said, you guys are going to go out. He said, you're going to be the XPW champion with your manager, Lazy Farouk. And I don't know, if we know the history of the name Farouk was the Sheik's manager, and he said, and that's how you guys, that's how you guys are going to sell this again. So Terry Funk just told me that we're going to stick together, and then the Sheik says, this is what you're going to do. Like, you don't fucking question it.
Yeah,
you just do it. It's So we were going around as Lazie Farouk and Sabu XPW champion, defending the title everywhere. And somewhere along the line, I don't remember where it happened. I think it was like, the first time we were in Japan, we did some shows and we did some stuff, and Sabu and I started throwing around the idea, and it was actually, again, Sabu's idea of what if we went to all these different territories. What if we went to Japan? What if we went to Mexico with AAA and to New Japan and we went to England and we got involved with whatever territories in England, and we went and we got involved with Stampede, and we kind of built this huge independent territory that's doing like a sort of exchange program.
Right.
Where guys from XPW are coming there, guys from Stampede are coming to XPW, and going to Mexico and going to Japan and going to England and going to Germany and doing all this stuff. And that was actually the brainchild of Sabu.
Okay.
And I don't want to say Sabu and myself. It was Sabu who had the idea, and then we just kind of polished it up together. So when we went to Japan, we actually sold the idea to Japan of Supreme, Homeless Jimmy,
right?
I think it was Chaos
and Pogo,
and like Christy Mist or something like that. So that was all Sabu, man. Rob didn't have that power. They didn't know who the fuck Rob Black was. And the funny thing is Rob didn't know who Onita was. Rob didn't know anything about New Japan or All Japan or anything. And that's like, that's not me shooting on Rob. That's just that's just the truth.
Yeah.
And when we first started to see that this wasn't going to work is when Bruce Hart came to the XPW office and was left in the lobby for 2.5 hours and no one ever saw him. That was fucked up. It made Sabu look like shit. It made
because I remember the only time I met him was when he was at the sports arena.
Yeah.
He came to the show.
Yeah.
And he was in the back, and I think we all went out for dinner actually afterward.
He came to the show, he was in the back, and then he came to the office and kind of got left hanging. And that's when we kind of said, it's like, come on, man. Like I can like, not knowing Onita is forgivable, but not knowing Bruce Hart, like, come on, bro. Like, that's like saying you don't know who the fucking Ronald McDonald is. Like, yeah, I've never heard of a Big Mac ever.
Wow, man.
And so that's where things kind of started. But we kept going, and we built this thing with Onita. And we went to Japan probably. Sabu and I went to Japan probably 3 or 4 times together. And at that point, Sabu and I had become inseparable. Like,
right.
we were traveling together, we were working on this thing together, and there is Sabu gave me an experience in professional wrestling that I never would have had otherwise, and I am eternally grateful for that. I talked to him the other day, right? Because of Genie and all that stuff, and
yeah.
We'll talk in a couple days when you're feeling better, but there's that's the thing that people see Sabu as the homicidal, genocidal maniac who's doing, crazy barbed wire matches and crazy all this shit. But that guy has a fucking mind for wrestling, man.
Oh, completely.
Like, he has a mind for wrestling. I think one of Sabu's, if there was anything I would fault him on, it's that he's like nice and caring to a fault.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, he's the dude. Like, I've seen it a bunch of times with him. I've seen it with my own eyes where like guys can't eat. Sabu just buys their food, you know, like he always takes care of the boys. And he'll go down in history as like the dude who always took care of the boys, always. Like if he's got it, you got it, you know, like, and that was my experience with him. So we got those guys, like we'd go meet Onita and Sabu would say, this is the idea. And I'd sell the idea. And we went back and forth a couple times to Japan. We were talking with Onita and saying like, this is what we want to do. And Onita loved it. He wanted to do an exploding barbed wire match in the United States forever. I guess it was close to happening in ECW.
Right. And
something didn't happen. And he was psyched on it. He loved the promotion. He loved what we were doing. Him and Sabu were super tight. Yeah. And we had it sold. And we did the press conference and we did everything. And it was like, I think we got banned from TV for
So I'll interject just to answer that, which was we were syndicated because we were on KJLA here in LA, and that was a syndicate of the America One network, which we were on in pockets of North America. Now, America One took us off. We eventually got it back, but America One took us off. So then we had a lull where we were just on KGLA. But the reason is, and maybe you'll remember this now, was when on the angle where you guys knock on the office, where are you? And he pissed on the Japanese flag.
Yeah.
Which was just yellow Gatorade or whatever it was. I don't know. But
it was yellow Gatorade. Like we weren't that sophisticated. That was the level of our sophistication. We're like, just get some Gatorade, you know?
But yeah, so I mean, of all the sex, the whatever, the violence, the cussing, the drugs or whatever storyline, it was the Japanese flag. Yeah.
It wasn't that Lizzie was getting power bombed through a flaming table or guys were bleeding like stuck pigs all over the place, but it was pissing on the Japanese.
Yeah. And then, like I said, we did eventually get it back, but no, that was, to answer your question, of all the stuff, you know, like it said, the fire in the hotel, lying to the fire marshal, it was the fucking flag that was yellow Gatorade basically got poured on top of it. but please continue, because but that was the official reason at the time why we got kicked off.
Yeah. So we did the press conference and we did everything. And I mean, the truth of it is Rob just wanted to do it himself. He didn't get who Onita is or was. Yes, there was a money thing.
Yeah.
But I mean, can you fucking imagine this small promotion from the Valley comes out of nowhere like a fucking comet, a runaway train, and they go from you know, doing bumps at the fucking Vogue Theater on Hollywood Boulevard to having Sabu and Onita headline in an exploding barbed wire match the first time in U.S. history. That would have been it. We could have closed up shop after that. We could have just said, we're done. Fuck everyone. We're done. We did this. And Rob didn't want to. Yes, it would have been expensive, but at the same time, it wasn't like the money was an excuse, because Rob just was like, fuck this guy. I could do this myself. And that was honestly like the conversation we had. Like, who the fuck is this guy anyways? And once that happened is when the real heat started, like the real life heat between Sabu and I and Rob.
Okay.
And Kevin, like me and Sabu knew like we were on our way out after that.
Yeah. And man, what a shame, because again, missed opportunity personified. Again, I'm sure I would say, well, it was the biggest missed opportunity in XPW, because really that's at the time the biggest missed opportunity in the wrestling industry, the entire wrestling industry.
Yeah, who could have topped that? Who could have said that? Who could have? I mean, anybody can have an exploding barbed wire match, and I believe XPW did have.
Well, that's the thing, we did, and there were some great Supreme, Vic Grimes, not taking anything away from them, but done at Pico Rivera, done the way they did. When I was referring to the money, that was a lot of it was because Onita wanted to bring his crew over basically to set everything up and look, do it right. Because that would have been the right way to do it with, you got the guys that historically have done it in Japan. And so you set it up the right way that the match is supposed to be set up by the guys who always set it up. And with the two guys, you're not just putting anybody into these matches. It's freaking Onita and it's Sabu, and it's done by the crew. It just would have been done right. And for the first time.
It would have been done right. It would have looked great. We were going to blow the entire fucking ring up with both of them in it. Like it was the end spot, because I was in the room when Onita and Sabu and I talked about it. It was no one else was there but Onita, Sabu, and I, because we were in Tokyo talking to Onita about it. The end spot was going to be for the ages. Like, I remember Onita said something to the effect of, "We blow it all up." And I'm like, "What do you mean? Like, we blow it all up?" He's like, "Everything." I'm like the whole building? He goes, "Oh." I was like, "Fuck it, let's do it." Like I was in. But at the same time, it's like these guys take these huge bumps, but no one's trying to get hurt. And not, dude, I love Vic Grimes and I love Supreme. Like, me and Vic are super cool, and I'm not downplaying their exploding deathmatch. I bet you if Vic was sitting right here right now, he'd be like, "I would have much rather seen Sabu and Onita do that match than me." There's like, that's not being disrespectful to them.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, 100%. And yeah, man, but no, that was something else. Like, I just remember feeling at that press conference, like, this is it. This is that turning point. Like you said, when you went to the Vogue Theater and you yourself was like, this is a good thing, but they're on to something. And that on to something moment to me was after that press conference. Here we go. We just started turning the corner, and here we go.
That, for me, that was it. For me, it was Olympic Auditorium. Exploding deathmatch in Los Angeles, never been done before. I was like, selfishly, we're going to go down in fucking wrestling history as the first people who did that, which a lot of people are like, who cares? No one cares. We fucking care. Yeah. And it would have been huge, and it was a missed opportunity, and it created a lot of friction in the office, especially the way it was handled with just kind of not returning phone calls,
I can't believe that, man. It's like, that's the first, unless I heard and I forgot, but I believe that's the first time. I may have heard about this, but I don't remember. But that's to me, that's hearing about the the Bruce Hart thing in the office. Like, what the hell, man? I just, that's unheard of.
And that was when, at some point in XPW, art kind of started to imitate life in a way, or life started to imitate art. Life started to imitate art, where we had that attitude of like, we're getting all this heat. You're either with us or against us. Right. Fuck you. We're going to the top, blah, 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 blah. But along the way, a lot of people kind of got shit on who didn't deserve to get shit on. And a lot of people who have a lot of respect in this business and that are legends in this business got shit on by Rob, who just, honestly, I think he just didn't know any better. And I'm not defending him. I'm not saying, I would never come to the defense of Rob Black. I'm just saying that I honestly think he just didn't know any better. While he knows the name Bruce Hart, I don't think he knows it's fucking Bruce Hart. And I don't think he knows it's Onita,
Right.
And I remember one time, because Sabu and I went down to Mexico and we had some huge match with like Damien and Halloween and
in Tijuana.
We went down.
I think I was at that, actually, because I went to
where I came out like throwing tortillas at people.
Yeah. Yes.
We had not Santos kid. It was like Damien or something's like kid came up to the ring like selling chicles, and I slapped him out of his hand, and like we went full heel to the point of when we went back, like after the match, we went back and the fucking cops came in and they're like, "We need to get you guys out of here right now." And
Dude, I still love, like I'm and the pandemic's going on, the wrestling's opening back up, and doing the show like I talked to earlier. I've been out of the game, but I've been announcing here and there, and we're doing these Puro Rasu down in Santa Ana, these lucha shows. To this day, it's so refreshing going to a lucha show because they still believe in a different way that we used to in America, and they don't take it too seriously. Like, they're not being politically correct. They're just that, and it's so relaxing in a way, if that makes any sense. It's like,
it makes perfect sense. You know what it is? The magic is still there.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, lucha hasn't really changed.
No.
It's like, this is lucha libre. This is the formula that works. This is what we do. And I think the big difference is it's not like, it's a cultural thing.
Yeah, right.
It's a cultural thing. Like, and they still, trust me, dude, we were in the fucking, I have been down in Mexico with Sabu probably 4, 5, 6 times. Bobby, the guy who like managed Halloween and booked a bunch of promotions and stuff down there. Like, Bobby was cooler than shit, and he loved us, and he'd bring us down all the time. I was on every one of those shows. Either Blue Demon or Santo was on one of the shows. If not both of them were on the shows, like, because obviously Sabu's there, so it's like it's the big promotion. I can't tell you what those guys look like.
Yeah, right.
I've been in the locker room with them for hours.
Yes.
I had dinner with Blue Demon. Had dinner with him. Sat across the table from him. Don't know what he looks like.
Wow.
Like, it was like, I was just like, fuck, man. This is the magic of wrestling. This is it. This is the art that is so unappreciated. He could have easily just walked out and took his mask off and went to a restaurant, and it would have been like, "Oh, this is me and Bob having fucking talk."
Right.
You know, and it could have been like, whatever, like, "Bro, you're Blue Demon?" He's like, "Yeah, man, my name's Billy. I'm from Reseda," or whatever the fuck. Right. Who knows? But no, man. Put on the suit and the tie with the mask, and you're just like, that's the fucking magic, man. That's the dedication. That's the magic. That's the kayfabe. That's Mexico. That's lucha libre, and it's fucking amazing, man.
It's cool to know that, like, because in pro wrestling in America, the internet unfortunately, look, man, that's why we're doing this show now. Cat is out of the bag, because for the longest time, even when we did Wrestling Society X in 2007. I still didn't want to do these type of interviews. And I was like, everyone else was doing them. And I just kind of wanted to hold on to it. But, you know, but in saying that, Lucha Libre basically is strong in the sense that they survived the internet era takeover, if you will, of professional wrestling. They survived it. It's still there, you know, so that says a lot. They did that in the internet age.
Yeah, I mean, and they'll continue to survive, and they'll continue to thrive. And it's like those guys, they just live it, man. Funny story. We were doing a show in Tijuana. I just remembered this. We were doing a show in Tijuana. Me and Sabu were getting ready to walk out, and it was after we got all that heat. When I just like, because they were like, I was like, they're like, get the heat, get some heat, and I'm like, okay, like, is there anything I shouldn't do? They're like, no, do whatever you want. Like, you're this rich American guy. You're coming to steal all of our talent, and there's going to be no more Lucha Libre in Mexico. Like, that was like, I was going to end Lucha Libre in Mexico. I was going to take everybody and make them all rich, famous.
It's like the devil coming to take their religion away.
Yeah. They hated me, dude. I had so much heat. I remember me and Sabu were walking out, And Halloween grabs me on the shoulder, like right when we're walking out. He goes, "Lazie." I go, "Yeah." He goes, "Don't get killed, brother." He's like, "Wait, what the fuck?" Like, but those guys just live it, and they do it. Like, it's a, and again, it's a cultural thing, and people don't. And I think the Mexican culture in wrestling, like, they don't even want to look behind the curtain.
Yeah, right. Yeah, they don't want.
If we went up and you're like, "Oh, want to see a magic trick?" and you do the trick, and you're like, and no one's gonna say like, "How did you do that?" Because they know how you did it. It's magic. Mm-hmm. Like when Psychosis got his hair cut off in the middle of a bull ring in Tijuana, people cried. Kids didn't go to school the next day, man.
Right.
Like, that's
beautiful.
It's beautiful.
It's beautiful, man.
It's beautiful.
It is. Well, Lazie, before we, this has been a pleasure, but really quick before we start wrapping up, can you give me like, actually, how was it for you? I know, look, you were in Danzig, you did all that, but as being in the wrestling industry, was it different for you, or did it mean something more to, oh, wow, we're at the LA Sport, being from LA, we're at the LA Sports Arena, and we're at the Grand Olympic. Was that special to you, even though you were in Danzig, even though you did all these concerts, or was it even with that, was it special to you, and or because of the concerts, just now that you're in wrestling in these venues, did that mean anything to you personally? For
me, the sports arena was like, it was cool. I was like, wow, this is really cool. But the Olympic Auditorium for me was like, dude, I'll never forget, because Sabu and I drove together to the shows and shit. And when we walked in, I almost started crying. And Sabu looked at me. He's like, "The fuck are you doing?" And I was like, like, it was, there was so much of my childhood was spent there watching the fabulous Thunderbirds. I mean, the LA T-Birds, and I saw Rowdy Piper wrestle there when I was a kid, when he was just whatever, Roddy Piper. I don't even know who he was then. And I saw so much lucha libre there and so much wrestling there. And then as a teenager, I saw all these punk rock shows there with Pat, with Larry Rivera. I saw Public Image there, and I saw Black Flag, and I saw all these bands there, which was cool. But the wrestling part of it, man, and the roller derby part of it, because for me, that's LA shit.
Yeah.
That's hometown shit, and for people in my age group, like, that was our shit. That was our Dodgers, like, as kids. Yeah. That was our home. That was LA stuff. That's what we were doing, and that's what we were proud of. And the Olympic Auditorium was our mecca, So to walk in there with XPW and to be doing a wrestling show there, like, so many years later, trumped any arena that I played in with a band. And while I will say, like, playing the Spectrum and playing some and all these big, like, stuff where I've seen like all these famous shows happen and stuff, was definitely cool and was a great experience. But for me, the pinnacle of it was that first XPW show at the Olympic Auditorium, and I also, like, that was my last show at the Olympic Auditorium, and I was like, if I'm gonna go out, I'm going out in my living room,
So that was Damage Incorporated, and that was the show where it was to be yourself and Sabu teaming up to go against Rob Black and the Messiah. And I can't remember the stipulation, but somehow the world title was on the line in a tag match.
I mean, the whole thing, like, the shoot part of it was that they just wanted to get the belt off of Sabu, because Rob wanted me out, and Sabu was like, if he's gone, I'm gone. And that's really what it was. And I think Kevin and Rob kind of scrambled to come up. We didn't really have any say on what it was. Like, Sabu's like, yeah, I'll put the guy over and I'll fucking leave. Like, whoever you want, because that's Sabu. He's like, I don't care. Like, at that point, we didn't care. The Onita thing had fell through. The Bruce Hart thing had fell through. All that weird shit happened with the Messiah, who Rob really liked. There was, at the time, we didn't know if it was true, but Cronus told us some stuff that Rob said about homeless Jimmy, and
yeah, Jimmy talked about that on here. Yeah,
I didn't know if Jimmy knew, but it was at the time. It was. I mean, it's fucking Cronus. Cronus. Cronus was a fucking maniac.
Yeah, like, and the coolest guy ever too, man.
The coolest.
Yeah.
But he, like, Cronus was Cronus.
Right.
Cronus was a wild maniac all the time, and I fucking loved him. And I remember we were having dinner, and I think it might have been at Strongbow Stadium or something, because most of the time, my time in XPW, most of the time I was kind of wrangling all the former ECW cats, and
right.
I would travel a lot with them, and we were having dinner, and Cronus said, "Hey man, Rob offered me some extra money to really give Jimmy some stiff bumps and to hurt him, and I don't understand why." And I was like, "To hurt Jimmy?
Yeah.
Who the fuck would want to hurt Jimmy? And for what? The dude already takes insane bumps.
Right.
What do you want to do? Kill him?" And I was like, I don't know. And I remember I said, I think he's just fucking around. And apparently he wasn't. And that kind of rubbed us the wrong way. And I know, Sabu, of all the guys there, the homegrown talent, Sabu really liked Jimmy,
yeah,
the Messiah, and Supreme. And he really liked the Messiah. He just always was like, "He's too fucking small, brother." And I'm like, "Yeah, he's a small dude." And my relationship with the Messiah was always good. We actually went and we did some spots after XPW.
Right.
XPW. And my relationship with Lester and Chaos and especially Jimmy, because Jimmy worked at the office, and you can't help but to not like Jimmy. I remember when those guys were going to Japan, I was so stoked. And it wasn't "Oh, well, I set this up," or Sabu and I set this up. I was so stoked that I was like, life's about to change for you guys.
Yeah.
Right. And it was, and I think it was kind of sold as Rob and Kevin did it, which I don't give a shit about. So we didn't have a lot, getting back to the match, we didn't have a lot of input. It was, we knew what the spots were. Rob was going to come off the top rope and I was going to be on the table. And, there was some other shit in there. And we were just, at that point, we didn't give a fuck. We were just we'll put whoever over and we want to get out of here and leave. I can't remember why I want to say it wasn't Messiah because of the Lizzie Borden thing. I don't know. I don't want to talk out of school and bring up something that everybody might not know about, but I don't know if Messiah wasn't there because of all that shit that happened with Messiah and Lizzie Borden and Messiah and Rob Black. So I don't know why he wasn't there, but it was Webb dressed as Rob Black, who did a fucking great job. It was it was wild, and that was it.
But no, I thought that Damage Incorporated, it was done very good. Rob left, and then you grabbed Rob, but it was really Webb dressed as Rob. Going back to the magic of wrestling, that was a magic trick, and I thought, we had to play it perfect on the commentary too. We didn't know, and then once we did realize that, wait a minute, wait just a minute, figuring it out.
Yeah.
I thought that was, like you said, it was a good way to go out at the end. But a match like that was a memorable angle, and
it was a great angle. I honestly, I'm trying to sit here and remember. I think it was Kevin's angle. Kevin, Kevin Kleinrock has a mind for wrestling, dude. He does. Like, I didn't have anything to do with all those weird fucking storylines that were going on. Like, that was all Kevin, and he kind of kept it all together, and they were all cohesive, like all of them. Like, Kevin's fucking brilliant. I haven't talked to the guy in years, and I don't know how Kevin feels about me. I have no heat with Kevin at all. I have no heat with anyone, except I don't even have heat with Rob. Rob's just a fucking asshole, and that's just all that is, like, whatever. But Kevin, I think that was Kevin's storyline, because Kevin's fucking smart, and Webb too, man. Like, I will say this, like, and I will say it for the world to hear it. White Trash Johnny Webb was the secret weapon of XPW. Like, that dude, and for if there would, I think a lot of the credit kind of gets misplaced, because, as you know, Kris, like, XPW was an all hands on deck situation. Like, everybody had a hand in everything, and everybody was doing everything, whether it was, fucking boxcar Josh, like, coming into my office and going like, hey dude, here's this idea. And he's like, I'm going to go tell Rob. I go, don't you fucking dare go in that office. It's a good idea. I'll go sell it to him. And you get nothing for it, except you get to sit there and kind of go like, fuck, I thought of that, and that's kind of the way XPW was. And it was like, I mean, you've been in those meetings with us where it was like, hey man, here's a good idea. How about blah, blah, blah. And they're like, that's a stupid idea. And then you come back to the next meeting like, we got this great idea. And you're just like, fuck, brilliant. So that's, it is what it is. But, I was happy to go out at the Olympic Auditorium. And like I said, like, my time in XPW, if it wasn't for XPW, I never would have met Sabu, who, like, became like a family member to me. We stayed at each other's houses. We lived with each other's family. I stayed with this family of his then wife in Japan. He stayed with me and hung out with my son in LA, and we built this relationship. And I got introduced to a place in the history of wrestling that a lot of people just don't get to see and just don't get to do. And for that, I'm forever grateful to XPW for that.
I think most share those sentiments, but let me ask you, Lazie, do you have, before we wrap up, and thanks for sharing that, my friend, do you have, let's say, a favorite match or matches in XPW, whether it involved yourself or not?
Well, for me, my favorite match, even though it wasn't much of a match, was Sabu and Abdullah the Butcher. Like, for me, like, and for a wrestling fan like me, like, come on, like, that doesn't happen for a lot of people. But I think, a lot of the matches that I really liked, I liked a lot of the Cronus and Homeless Jimmy matches, and I liked a lot of the Messiah and Sabu matches. One of, Messiah, like, I'm so fucking glad that his story didn't end with the shit that happened to him.
Right.
Like, we went out, I think, after that, and we went to what was that promotion in Orange County?
UPW.
UPW. John Cena came from there or whatever. We went to UPW, and we were so fucking over that they didn't ask us back. Like, that's the inside scoop on that. What happened was, I was kind of in the shadows hanging out with Looney Lane from UPW.
Right, Looney Lane.
She invited me to a show. I went down to the show because I was obviously friends with her and friends with Big Perm, or whatever that guy's name was, the announcer, Big Sherm, whatever.
Big Schwag.
Big Perm. But and we went down there, and I was just there seeing a show, and I walked in and I sat down, and people started chanting XPW when I walked in, and I was like, oh fuck. So I went to the back and I was like, you know, and I was like trying to be respectful. I'm like, hey man, I'm not trying to, especially coming off the ECW thing. I'm like, I'm not trying to create any heat. I didn't know that was going to happen. I'm super sorry. Then when I left XPW, it was like a couple weeks after that, and Messiah left, we came down and cut a promo, and it was over. Like Messiah was fucking over with the crowd.
Yeah.
They never asked us back. But a lot of those Sabu and Messiah matches were great matches, man.
Yeah. You reminded me, I went to a UPW show probably around that same time just to check it out. And when I walked in, it was kind of the same thing. Fast forward, I'm sitting at the table watching, and from the balcony, like I'm watching, and a soda like cup comes right in front of me. I was like, that was not an accident. Like someone was trying to hit me. And I look up at the balcony, and like 5 or 6 heads just they go away. And I looked up, I'm like, dude, I'm just here watching the show. Who the hell did that? No one came up. I'm just watching the show. But there was heat, and I had no idea going in there that was going to be the case, you know. And I almost got pelted. Literally, they were aiming for me, but it like that, you know.
That's the territory wars, you know.
Yeah.
I went to some other show and everybody started chanting, "Fuck you, lazy," and I was like, I just sat there. I was like, yeah, come on, you know, like
yeah.
That was the heat that we brought, and it was kind of like unbeknownst to us because we didn't even know what fucking UPW was doing. We had no idea what anyone was doing outside of XPW.
And to the point where, like, I can speak for myself, like as a wrestling fan, I remember I lost touch so much with even WWF, WCW, ECW. I just lost touch because we were so focused on what we were doing. And so I get it now when people say, like, Vince McMahon doesn't know what's going on here, there, that, the other. They do, but in a way they kind of don't, even when WCW was doing stuff, because, dude, they were just, we got to worry about what we're doing. Yes, we know that they're doing the same entity as us, but we're doing this, and our time, our energy has to be focused on this, you know?
Yeah, and our attitude was kind of like, we don't care what they're doing. There's no one but us.
Yeah, we have to think that way.
And also, I think that's what brought us up to where we were. But I also think that brought us down to being nothing. You know, the
egos, the collective egos.
It's the age-old story of too much too soon. Like, it sucks that XPW ended on such like a typical note. You know?
And it's amazing, like when we were talking at the beginning of the show, that, like, again, I've said this from time to time, seeing all the comments, the Facebook people message me, instant messenger, and it's like, there's so much interest in this so many years later, and XPW was only there for 4 years.
Yeah.
And it's like, but so much happened in those 4 years, and XPW was in the wrestling industry in those 4 years that, man, people, it's cool. It's amazing, but I'm here to say it's cool as all hell that people are still talking about it, you know.
I think it's great. And it's like, you know, it's part of Southern California history, and it's part of wrestling history, like good, bad, or indifferent. Like, we were there, and we made history. Like, we absolutely did. I wish it would have been more, and it would have gone a different way, but, you know, wish in one hand and shit in the other, and tell me which fills up faster. But we did some very, very cool shit with some cool people in a short amount of time. And it's like, you know, we were there, and we fucking did it, dude. And we were part of it. And it's bitching. Like, it ended tragically with, you know, me destroying Christy Miss fucking videotape, and Onita not coming in, and blah, 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 and all the drama that was behind it. But for that time, man, we made our mark in wrestling history.
I want to ask you, before we sign off, about that. I mean, you kind of summed it up in a nutshell, but I want to ask you what your opinion is on the legacy of XPW. Before that, I want to share, you brought up John Kronus. I want to say rest in peace to him. Q of the West Siders, Supreme, Dynamite D, Chris Candido, Felony referee, Pitbull, one of the Pitbulls, like the Public Enemy. Dude, the list goes on and on, unfortunately.
Axel Rotten.
New Jack, we just lost New Jack. And of course, all our prayers and thoughts go out to Sabu, Super Genie, we just lost, who did her final interview with us. Before that, I want to share with you, like you talked about John Kronus, like this giant, more than 300-pound guy, menacing guy if you don't know him. And him and I carpooled to Ventura. This was maybe his first trip at working for XPW. And we were coming down the hill toward Camarillo and on the 101. And he's like, Kloss, look at this. I can't believe it. This fucking cactus is out here. I mean, I seen these in the Bugs Bunny cartoons, but look at this. Can you look at Kloss? I said, I know. I've seen them before. Yeah, but these are real live cactuses. I never seen this shit. And then he goes, oh man, I need a smoke after that one. And then I'm like, oh bro, you know what? You can't. When we get there, dude, like no smoking in the car, dude. Like I just got this car. And he goes, oh, just one cigarette. I'm like, nah, dude, I'm sorry, man. And so like he's in the front seat, 300-pound, and he gets down on his knees on the car floor and he goes, oh, please, 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 please. Oh, please, 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 please. And he's doing that for like a minute. And I'm like looking at this 300-pound guy just, oh, please, 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 please. Come on, Chris. Come on, Chris. And finally I was, okay, fine, hang it out the window, smoke your cigarette, you know. But it was like, oh, you're the best, Chris, you know.
Dude.
I'll never forget that, dude. It was like,
Cronus was awesome, man. Cronus he was hilarious. He was a big, menacing,
big guy.
Teddy bear, like just super, super nice guy. And I remember he was really, like I said, he was really distraught and didn't know what to think when he told me that about Robin. I don't know if Jimmy talked about it, but
yeah, he did.
Yeah, that was fucked up, man.
And to this day, it makes it. Yeah, I mean, it makes no. What was the reason?
Yeah,
to this day.
You know, if we were like, hey, Jimmy, you're gonna bump off of the Eiffel Tower, like Kronus is gonna be like, well, that sucks, but let's do it. You know, like Jimmy, I don't get it. Like, it didn't make any sense to me. But
no, but no, man. You know, talking about Kronus, talking about all these guys, we're very fortunate, and like you said, you're very thankful, and so am I, and basically everybody on the show agrees with that. And but before we leave, Josh Lazie, by the way, thank you for joining us. And it's been an awesome pleasure catching up with you, my friend. And but to close it out, what in your mind, from the standpoint of the guy who worked in the company, but also from the kid who went to the Olympic Auditorium, growing up in LA and all that, what in your mind is in all scope of professional wrestling going to be the legacy of XPW?
Man, unfortunately, I think for a long time the legacy of XPW was just going to be that it was an ECW knockoff, you know, and that's how people are gonna look at it, because that's how it's gonna be portrayed. Because ECW is, you know, like I said, it's like that was everybody's thing at that point, and you can't, and you know, you could never blaspheme ECW. But I think as people look back and as there's more conversations like this, I think people are going to see that, you know, we did kind of know what we were doing. We had some people in the company who have a lot of knowledge and about, you know, wrestling history. You being one, Kevin Kleinrock, you know, that mumble mouth motherfucker being another one. I love it.
I know.
And, you know, Larry Rivera, like, I honestly, like, you'd be hard pressed to find someone who knows more about the history of wrestling than Pat Howitt, aka Larry Rivera. And, and even Sabu and Bruce Hart. And, you know, maybe I fucked up by not voicing what we were trying to do with the territory wars and how we were trying to bring that back. But, you know, I think a lot of stuff kind of fell on deaf ears just because the man at the very top didn't have the same knowledge and passion for professional wrestling as everybody under him. So I think the legacy is going to be just too much too soon. That's kind of going to be the story of it. But fuck, what a ride, man.
Yeah. And so much, like you said, so much happened in the 4 years, and people still talk about it. And Rivera answered that question kind of like what you're saying. It was just a ragtag bunch of guys that made it happen, you know, and no explanation was needed because we all got the business, and then we kind of made it work. Every day was one step at a time. We didn't know what the next step was going to be.
We didn't, you know, and I know people like, even like, I think, you know, the biggest, like, I would say the biggest thing up until recently was probably the heat wave incident.
Yeah.
You know? And again, like, it wasn't a planned thing. It like, we portrayed it as a planned thing, and we pushed it as like, but behind the scenes, there was like, Kevin, I'm almost positive it was Kevin was like, oh, we should get the guys some tickets to the show.
That was it.
And that was it. Yeah. That was it. Wear XPW shirts, go to the show. There wasn't, that was literally the discussion. Like, I was sitting right there and I was like, oh, okay. Like, it wasn't even a discussion enough to where it wasn't even a discussion. Like, you know, Rob said, fuck, ECW's coming to town. And Kevin said, you know, it would be funny. Let's get some tickets and send some guys to the show. Like, fuck these guys. And we're like, okay, fuck them. By the way, what are we having for lunch? Like, that was the amount of time that was put into the ECW thing. We blew it up and, you know, we portrayed it. But I think, you know, like, even now, because of Dark Side of the Ring and because of New Jack's thing with Vic Grimes, it's like that whole spot kind of like sums up XPW. It was just like, we're up here, I'm going to tase you and I'm going to throw you the fuck off here. And that's just what's going on. Yeah. And that is like the XPW story in a nutshell. Like, we are on this thing and we're going to sell this spot or die trying. And I think that's kind of what would sum up XPW. And it's, you know, I fucking love, man, I love that company and I love the business. And I wish Sabu and I could have pulled off what we wanted to pull off. But at the same time, it's like it would have altered the story and it would have altered the history. And, you know, it's fuck what I'm saying. I want to see Onita and Sabu in an exploding death. Motherfucking Olympic Auditorium in LA, California, the home of wrestling.
Well, speaking of all that, closing it out, we're going to close that right here. And my brother, my Scorpions / UFO / Shanker's brother, Josh Lazie. It's great connecting with you, man.
Yeah, it's good to see you, man. And I'm really glad you're doing this. And if there's anyone who should be doing it, it is 100%.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you, man. Well, anything? Do you want to plug anything? You want to tell the fans or say anything to the fans or anything?
I don't have anything to plug. Like, okay. I'm on Instagram and Facebook and whatever. Like, the only thing I would say to fans is thanks for the support, man, and thanks. I don't think people understand the true passion and the true love that comes from people who are 100% born and raised Angelino fucking proud. And that's what made XPW what it was, is those guys.
Thank you, man. And I mean, you're right, because so many people say when we went to Philadelphia, even though it was a big deal and it was cool, it just something was missing. And And you're right. That was the people that were born with this company, which were the fans out here. Yeah. So, well, Josh Lazie, man, once again, want to thank you for joining us on Xtreme Memories. You can see us on the 15th and 30th of every month. And again, get you on the show while we hit that 1 year milestone. So couldn't think of any better guest to have on. And this show would not be complete without you, my friend. So thank you for joining us as a guest, my friend.
Thank you.
Thank you, man. All right, fans, we will see you next time. Christy Olson, take it away.
Thank you for watching Xtreme Memories, hosted by Kris Kloss. He's dropping new episodes every month on the 15th and 30th. You can be the first to tune in by subscribing to the Wrestling Chatter channel right here on YouTube. See you next time.